So my topic for this morning, as was mentioned, is rheumatic heart disease in adolescents and young adults. I have nothing to disclose. In this short lecture, I hope to be able to discuss how to recognize rheumatic heart disease in the adolescent and young adult, when and how to manage these patients, and when to refer for specialized care, intervention, and surgery. So is rheumatic heart disease still a disease burden? Unfortunately, yes, it's still a problem that we encounter globally. It is still the most common cardiovascular disease in children and young people worldwide. Overall, there is an estimated of more than 40 million cases globally, as reported by the Global Disease Burden Disease Study of 2019. More than 1,000 cases per 100 population in endemic countries, especially in the low to middle income countries. And there's 3.4 cases per 100,000 even in non-endemic countries. And it's estimated that there are 300,000 deaths per year attributed to rheumatic heart disease and loss of more than 10 million disability-adjusted life years. So it still remains to be a global problem. If you consider this report is from the Global Burden of the Disease in 2019, in Asia, in the 49 countries, more than 22 million people have rheumatic heart disease, and 250,000 deaths in Asian and all age population. You compare to the global statistics, we have a lower prevalence in Asia of 9%, but there is a higher mortality of 41% because of lack of adequate medical and surgical treatment. The closest 12 Asian countries, of which the Philippines is part, the highest level of years lost, lives lost, as of 2017, we have the smallest reduction in the cases of rheumatic heart disease. In the Philippines, there's an increasing trend in age standardized years lost lives. This is from 1990 to 2019. The pathogenesis of rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease has not changed much through the years. You have a genetically susceptible host exposed to the group A beta hemolytic streptococcus pharyngitis and occasionally to pyodermas or skin infection from group A strep. This triggers an autoimmune inflammatory reaction resulting in acute rheumatic fever, which we diagnose using the modified Jones criteria. And recurrent acute rheumatic fever leads to rheumatic heart disease, which is the permanent disability that is caused by the group A streptococcus. The first episode is common among children ages from 5 to 14 to 15 years of age. It is still the most common acquired heart disease in people under age 25. And as to the young adults, the diagnostic peak is usually ages 20 to 39. And this can even be seen in pregnant women as soon as they, in their childbearing years. Complications of rheumatic heart disease leads to the lifelong disability. So we're hoping that the acute rheumatic fever can be arrested so that it does not lead to rheumatic heart disease. The natural history of acute rheumatic fever, as we know, it's an active illness 2 to 4 weeks following a group A streptococcal tonsillopharyngitis. Again, the highest incidence is between 5 to 14 to 15 years of age. And we use the modified Jones criteria to make a diagnosis of acute rheumatic fever. So we have either two major manifestations, one major and two minor manifestations, and it has been revised to include even three minor manifestations, plus an evidence of a previous group A streptococcal infection. The Jones criteria has also been revised to include echo features to make a diagnosis of carditis. Acute rheumatic fever is recognized in 30 to 50% only of cases with rheumatic heart disease. So a lot of cases are missed because they do not present with a typical acute rheumatic fever. They already present with rheumatic heart disease. And the most dreaded complication of acute rheumatic fever is rheumatic carditis, which is a pancarditis and affects the valves of the heart. Rheumatic heart disease, as we know, it develops after one or more acute rheumatic fever episodes. Usually, in 50% of cases, it is unrecognized. Therefore, it is untreated. That's why it progresses to rheumatic heart disease. And rheumatic carditis is the major manifestation of acute rheumatic fever that is dreaded and lifelong results in a lifelong defect. And it's immune-mediated injury specifically to the heart valves causing valvulitis. So how do we recognize acute rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease? You have, they can present either an asymptomatic case or a symptomatic case. The symptomatic cases of rheumatic heart disease may present with the typical murmur of mitral regurgitation or aortic insufficiency. They may be subclinical without a murmur, but this is diagnosed to have rheumatic heart disease because of echo findings suggestive of rheumatic heart disease. Or they can present for the first time because they are symptomatic after a known acute rheumatic fever attack. But again, 50% of them may not present with acute rheumatic fever, but rather present already as rheumatic heart disease. Some of them even present in pregnancy or after a complication has already set in the form of exertional dyspnea, fatigue, and palpitations. Or they can have complications of heart failure, stroke, endocarditis, tachyarrhythmias, pulmonary hypertension. And the typical murmurs encountered in rheumatic heart disease are the murmurs of mitral regurgitation, aortic regurgitation, mitral stenosis, or a combination of the three. Okay, so the cornerstone in the screening and diagnosis of rheumatic disease is still the echocardiography. We can do a POCUS or a point-of-care cardiac ultrasound by using a handheld device. This is used for active case detection and a strategy for screening in areas with low resources or very few trained healthcare workers. It can detect subclinical rheumatic heart disease, and with the use of POCUS, it improves the accuracy of diagnosis of rheumatic heart disease from 50% to as high as 80%. So this is how to establish the diagnosis of rheumatic heart disease. For the criteria for a pathologic MR, all of the four features are required. They are mitral regurgitation is observed in two views, parasternal long and apical four-chamber. There is a minimum MRGEP of 1.5 centimeters for patients weighing less than 30 kilograms, or 2 centimeters for patients weighing more than 30 kilograms observed in one view. If you are unable to get estimate of the weight, you can use that age of 10 years. So those less than 10 years or more than 10 years of age. You measure the velocity, which is more than 3, and it's when you look at the different views, it's a pansystolic jet. The criteria for pathologic aortic regurgitation, again, requires all of the following. It is observed in two views. There's a velocity of more than 3, and it's also a pandiastolic jet. And the abnormal rheumatic heart disease morphologic criteria or abnormal valvular criteria. The mitral valve, the anterior leaflet may be thickened or there may be cordial thickening. The mitral valve leaflet may also be restricted or there's excessive anterior leaflet tip motion. So these are the pathologic mitral valve morphology. For the aortic valve, there is noted aortic valve thickening, prolapse, or restricted leaflet motion. In 2023, the World Heart Federation came up with guidelines for the cardiographic diagnosis of rheumatic heart disease. These guidelines can be used as an approach to rheumatic heart disease screening, an approach to RHD classification with a risk of progression of the disease and staging and care of these patients. So let me discuss each one at a time. So in rheumatic heart disease screening, even if, so if you want to screen school-age children or young adults, even if there's no history of acute rheumatic fever or rheumatic heart disease, you can do a screening echocardiogram using a handheld device. A negative screen, there's no RHD echocardiogram and does not meet the minimum criteria of a positive screen. So what is a positive screen? A minimum MR jet length of 1.5 centimeter for patients weighing less than 30 and 2 cm for patients weighing more than 30, present in at least one view for at least 2 consecutive frames. So unlike that diagnosed rheumatic heart disease, it has to be seen in 2 views for the screen in at least one view. Or an NEAR jet observed in at least one view for at least 2 consecutive frames. Or there is already evidence of restricted mitral valve leaflet motion and reduced opening. If you do have a positive screen, then we proceed with confirmatory echocardiogram. And in the confirmatory echocardiogram, we proceed to classify this rheumatic heart disease with emphasis on risk for disease progression. So for the confirmatory echocardiogram, you must have evidence of rheumatic heart disease. So there is already moderate or severe mitral regurgitation, moderate or severe aortic insufficiency, or evidence of mitral stenosis or aortic stenosis, or pulmonary hypertension, or there is already evidence of decreased left ventricular systolic function. If this is confirmed, then you already have a stage C or D patient. Again, to the right is the criteria for pathologic mitral regurgitation, which requires all observed in at least 2 views, minimum MR jet based on the weight or age of the patient, the velocity, and it's a pansystolic jet. Or you have the criteria for pathologic aortic insufficiency, which requires all, again, observed in 2 views, a velocity of more than 3, and it's a pandiastolic jet. Or you have an RHD morphologic criteria, wherein you have anterior leaflet thickening, chordal thickening. You can have restriction in the mitral valve opening, or there's excessive anterior leaflet motion, or the aortic valve may prolapse and there's restricted leaflet motion. If, however, you're not able to confirm a pathologic MR or AR, then you exclude the features aortic and mitral valve. If there is some pathologic MR or AI, but no abnormal morphology, so just the presence of mitral regurgitation, then you will fall under stage A. While those with pathologic MR and AR, based on the criteria on the right, but normal morphology, then you would fall under stage B. So again, pathologic MR or AR is at least 1 morphologic criteria if less than 20 years old, or pathologic MR or AR, at least 2 morphologic criteria for those more than 20 years of age. So the distinction is in the age and in the weight of the patients. Okay, so having staged the different cases of rheumatic heart disease, you can define what to do for these patients. So for the stage A, where there is minimum echocardiographic criteria for RHD achieved, patients might be at risk for disease progression, but they are low risk for on the basis of the risk score. So what is recommended is that they be enrolled in an RHD registry. Secondary antibiotic prophylaxis initiation is reasonable. That's a class 2A recommendation, but you need to review using echocardiogram data in the next 1 to 2 years to decide whether you will continue with the secondary antibiotic prophylaxis. The cessation of the secondary antibiotic prophylaxis could be considered if echocardiographic findings are now normal after 1 to 2 years of therapy. If you are in stage B, wherein there's mild rheumatic heart disease, patient is at risk of developing clinical symptoms of valvular heart disease. They are moderate to high risk of rheumatic heart disease progression on the basis of risk score. Again, they should be enrolled in the rheumatic heart disease registry, and they need the secondary antibiotic prophylaxis. And the duration of the prophylaxis will be dependent on the local guidelines or on the WHO guidelines, which I will enumerate in the next few slides. While those with class C and D, they have advanced rheumatic heart disease. These patients are at high risk for developing clinical complications or already have clinical complications and needing medical or surgical interventions. And these patients are at high risk for progression to stage D or death, even death. They need to be enrolled in the rheumatic heart disease registry. You have to start with your secondary antibiotic prophylaxis, including specialized care based on the international guidelines. And again, you have to proceed with secondary prophylaxis. Okay, so and this is the latest AHA recommendation. Benzathine penicillin is still the most effective formulation to arrest the progression and to eradicate group A streptococcal pharyngitis, and it's superior to oral penicillin prophylaxis in preventing group A streptococcal pharyngitis and recurrent acute rheumatic fever. Every 3 to 4 week schedule for high risk or those with recurrent acute rheumatic fever is recommended. For those with acute rheumatic fever without carditis, the longer of 5 years from the attack or until age 21 years. While those with acute rheumatic fever and resolved carditis, but no permanent valvular disease, the longer of 10 years from the last attack of acute rheumatic fever or until age 21. While those with acute rheumatic fever and already with severe chronic rheumatic heart disease or with known valvular lesion, including those who have undergone surgical repair or valve replacement, the longer of 10 years or until age 40, or some even lifelong prophylaxis, especially if the disease is endemic. Rheumatic heart disease can be prevented and controlled, and several points of intervention have been shown to be effective. So primordial prevention is the improvement of the environment, socio and economic conditions of the population at risk for acute rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease. That's why there is a decrease in incidence and prevalence in the developed countries or the high-income countries where social and economic conditions are far better than in low and middle income countries. Primary prevention is the treatment and early detection of streptococcal sore throat. We treat with antibiotics to reduce the incidence of acute rheumatic fever. Your secondary prevention is the use of antibiotics for those who have been diagnosed with acute rheumatic fever or rheumatic heart disease to reduce the recurrence of acute rheumatic fever and can lead to rheumatic heart disease. And finally, we need to do tertiary prevention. These are medical and surgical treatment of those with complicated acute rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease. This is just a diagram of treatment options. So on the bottom is the primary prevention to reduce the risk of rheumatic fever, reduce the incidence of group A streptococcal infection and therefore reduce rheumatic fever, and preventing with secondary prophylaxis every 21 or 28 days, benzathine penicillin will reduce the incidence of rheumatic heart disease. And with prevention of recurrent acute rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease, we can hopefully prevent and with surgery and medication, premature disability and death of these patients. So when do we refer? Medical and surgical management in patients, especially if they already present with heart failure symptoms or atrial fibrillation, or they have had a bout of infective endocarditis. Those pregnant women who may present for the first time during pregnancy will need immediate treatment after they deliver. Percutaneous intervention in almost 80% of symptomatic patients with isolated severe rheumatic mitral stenosis. Surgery in 20% of those with mitral stenosis with unfavorable anatomy and high Wilkins score. So the final treatment if medical treatment is not effective, is to proceed with surgery. And this is indicated where there is severe valvular dysfunction, especially if they are symptomatic. And the indication for valvular surgery is similar to those of non-rheumatic pathologies. Repair versus replacement, transcatheter versus valve implantation will depend on the local practices and expertise. And finally, there's palliative care for those who are in severe heart failure who cannot anymore undergo a surgical treatment. So this is just a diagram again to remind us of what needs to be done. So largely, the epidemiology is determined by poverty and access to effective primary health care. So if we reduce poverty and improve the access of the general population to primary health care, we have a chance of eradicating rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease. Progression of rheumatic heart disease even without noticeable acute rheumatic fever episodes. This is the reason why we give secondary prophylaxis. We do not wait for the signs and symptoms of acute rheumatic fever, wherein 50% may not be present on the initial presentation of rheumatic heart disease. Group A, streptococcal pharyngitis and skin infections have to be treated. So it's not only streptococcal sore throat, pyodermas can cause also acute rheumatic fever. And the diagnosis is based on the revised Jones criteria, wherein we can even use handheld devices or the echocardiogram to make a diagnosis of rheumatic valvulitis. Attention should be made to care for the continuum. Not only are we preventing rheumatic fever, rheumatic heart disease, but we have to try and treat the long-standing medical problems of these patients medically or even surgically. And we strengthen primary care again and make sure that the penicillin supply is constant. And as much as possible, we integrate acute rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease control program in primary health care or universal health law. Universal health coverage for patients affected with RHD and acute rheumatic fever will help a lot in the eradication of this disease. So as key points, the recognition of rheumatic heart disease in the adolescent and young adult include a history of acute rheumatic fever. There may be the presence of the classic murmur of the left-sided valve disease. You have signs and symptoms of heart failure or already have complications such as arrhythmias in the form of atrial fibrillation, stroke, or endocarditis. About 30 to 50% of RHD patients are asymptomatic and may be missed, and some may even present during pregnancy or after complications have set in. Echocardiography is a valuable tool in the diagnosis, determining severity of the valve disease and management planning. The cardiac focus or point of care ultrasound may be used for case finding, and secondary prophylaxis with benzathine penicillin is still the cornerstone in the treatment of acute rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease. And about 80% of symptomatic isolated mitral stenosis can still be addressed with percutaneous balloon mitral valvuloplasty. Surgery is indicated as in the other non-rheumatic valvular heart disease. Thank you.